You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the first 2 episodes of Lower Decks Season 5, Dos Cerritos and Shades of Green. I'm Don Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Father Jason Tyler. Hey, Father.
Hello.
And Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, be sure to stick around to the end of the show. We have some great listener feedback on our recent episodes on the second season of Star Trek Prodigy, so be sure to check that out. And also, if you're not yet doing so, follow The Secrets of Star Trek. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn. You can find us in your favorite podcast app or on our YouTube channel, where you can watch us as we discuss the Lower Deck Season 5. And be sure when you do so, hit the bell to get notifications. And of course, you need to subscribe and hit the like and do all those things. I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy called The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows, where we discuss all kinds of other shows besides Star Trek. And so you can find that wherever fine podcasts are found, or at sqpn.com/secrets. So we are talking about these first 2 episodes. And so let's start with the first one, Dos Cerritos. Jimmy, can you give us a recap of what happens?
This week, Tendi is being an Orion pirate, and she's successful, but she's not killing anybody and is trying to keep her crew from killing anybody too. She gets a call from her sister Erica, who will let her go back to Starfleet if she procures an ancient Orion ship for her, but when they get to the ship, a competing group of blue Orion pirates try to take it instead. Devana and her crew manage to defeat the blue Orions with laughing gas, and they retrieve the ship. Devana is now free to go back to Starfleet, but the blue Orions declare war, claiming that the laughing gas was unpirate-like conduct, and Devana decides to stay to clean up the mess. Meanwhile, the Cerritos is drawn into an alternate universe and must get back. It turns out that the alternate Cerritos is captained by Becky Freeman, the alternate version of Beckett Mariner, who's been hiding behind her middle name to distance herself from her mother, Captain Freeman. Captain Becky is an uptight tyrant with an iron grip on her crew, but she decides she wants to go back to being an insubordinate loose cannon, so she ties up Mariner and switches places with her. Our Mariner tries to get the alternate Cerritos to fire on our Cerritos, just as it is about to go back to our universe, but our Mariner is too nice, and the alternate crew realize that she's not their captain. They then help her get back and switch places again, and the alternate Becky is put into the brig. The end.
All right. So, Father, what's your overall impression of this one?
A very enjoyable episode. Good way to start the 5th season, I thought. The alternate universe thing, can sometimes go well, sometimes not. But I thought this was kind of an interesting look at, okay, what are ways things could have been differently or been different for our main characters and such. And interesting to see how this Orion Civil War plays out, too, over the season.
Mm-hmm. Jimmy, how about you?
I enjoyed it. It was funny. I thought as I was doing it, there's no way I can take notes on every little joke that's here, but I thought it was, funny. It's nice to see them resolve, or at least ostensibly resolve the requirement that Devana stay on Orion, as quickly as they did. They ended up drawing it out for an extra episode, but it was nice to see, at the end of episode 1, she's technically free to go back. And so I liked that. I liked seeing the contrasts between the Cerritos crew that we're familiar with and the one from the alternate universe. And I'm sure we'll talk about some of those differences. It was also nice, and this was one of the things that made the news, but it was also nice to find out why one of our heroes is Beckett Mariner instead of Beckett Freeman. And so she's Barrett Mariner Freeman, but she just uses Beckett Mariner to distance herself from her mom.
So I like this one too. It was a good start. I'm looking forward to the season. It was a fun out of the gate. I have to mention the opening sequence. They've made some changes to it. They do it every year, and there's that scene where they're fighting the Borg cube, and they keep adding different elements every season. And this season they added, was it the big green hand of Apollo?
Yep.
That was the most visible one. A V'ger was in there, I think, as well. And the Tholian web was there. So it was just so much fun to watch this scene get more and more crowded. I'm sure there were other stuff more subtle stuff that they've added in the opening titles.
I saw the crystalline entity there, but I was trying to remember, was that also in the previous season?
That's been there before.
It has. Okay. Yeah.
And then the whale call thing from Voyage Home and that sort of stuff. So that was there before.
I make a point of watching the opening credits in the first episode of each season, and thereafter I skip it.
Same here.
See what's new and then let it go.
Yeah, exactly. So it was interesting to see. So we had the two different threads. I guess they consider the alternate timeline to be the A plot because that's what they named the episode for. Two
Cerritos is in Spanish is what dos Cerritos would mean.
Yes, right. And but
Cerritos.
Let's talk about the Tendi bit first. The B plot. So we start off with her kind of stealing from this rich guy who's got this collection, and it's reminiscent of the guy in Next Gen who stole data to make it part of his connection.
The one who dies with the most toys. Yeah,
right.
And he's got
Fajo or something.
Yeah, and he's got that weird horizontal nose thing too, which one of the pirates steals from him.
It's prescription.
I like in the opening sequence. So he's got this woman on his arm that he's trying to impress, and it's going to turn out that's Divana, but she's using a holographic disguise so she doesn't look like an Orion pirate. But he's talking on the phone to the Orion pirate ship as it's attacking. And he tells one of Divana's crew to sling. He forget the epithet he uses for her, but it's like "you dirty Orion dog" or something like that. I mean, it's not that, but it's something like that. But he tells her to slink back to whatever dark dungeon you came from, you dirty Orion dog. And the crew member says, "I'd rather die than go back to my childhood dungeon."
Yeah. I noted that one as well.
The Lower Decks version, like the way that they've kind of spun out the Orions and their very strange piratical culture, like they've really leaning into the idea of what if a culture was all about, well, A, was matriarchal, but B, all about piracy. It kind of is a bit fun. I mean, let's face it, in Discovery, the Orions in that series, especially when they jump to the future, spoilers, are kind of also what's my trying to say? Parody anyway. I mean, they're kind of overblown in that sense. They're like kind of like the Ferengi being super capitalist. Yeah. And so they kind of do that with but they're really leaning into it here, and it's a lot of fun. So I really like that. The other thing I think was interesting here is, so when we get to this crashed Orion ship, is we find that they have to do battle with these blue Orions. And for folks who didn't watch the animated series, the blue Orions were from that series. There's an episode called "The Pirates of Orion," and the Enterprise has to do battle with them. They stole a medicine that Spock needed to survive, and they had to get it back from them. But they look just like these blue Orions. So again, Lower Decks mining the depths of Star Trek lore for fans to really dig into and to go, oh my gosh, that I totally forgot about that thing, and to bring it up. So that's one of the things. Again, what we love, what I love so much about Lower Decks is that.
And the reason we may have the blue Orions may be because of Hal Sutherland's color blindness, because he was like one of the producers or the producer of the Star Trek animated series, and he was colorblind, and so he couldn't tell the difference between gray, for example, between gray and pink, which is why there's so many pink things in the animated series, because a lot of stuff was planned to be gray, but it looked pink to him. Pink looked gray to him, and so we have pink spaceships and pink uniforms and
Klingons at one point, I think.
Yeah, and so I could easily see the same thing. He may not distinguish well between green and blue.
Blue, green,
and so even though the Orions were green going all the way back to the cage, he may have seen blue as the same color.
It just amazes me to think, I mean, we're not talking about the animated series, per se, but that you have an animated show and you have a colorblind producer. Like, of all the things that you would not want to have your, someone in charge of a animated, drawn cartoon show. Oh, it's so funny.
It was for kids in the 1970s, so I don't guess they were too focused on such matters.
Yeah, and I know that Roddenberry didn't consider it canon. I've been seeing articles.
He did initially.
Yeah.
It was only after Next Gen that he wanted to decanonize it, but at first it's like, this is how we keep Star Trek alive.
Yeah, right. So back on this Orion ship. So apparently there was a historic Orion plague in the past, and it turns out this ship was not a warship, but a hospital ship to cure the plague that crashed, centuries ago on this planet. So that becomes an element of how Tendi defeats these blue Orions with non-lethal means. And that's really kind of the running theme here is Tendi is an unusual Orion because she wants to use she doesn't want to kill. She's a Starfleet officer. And so she's sort of a renegade Orion who doesn't want to, defeat her enemies with violent death.
Even though she could.
Yes, because she's the mistress of the winter constellations. I love that aspect is that, she could kill you. She is deadly, but she doesn't want to. Like, she's restraining herself. And so I kind of like, sweet Tendi is this deadly killer who just doesn't want to do it. And that kind of gets her in trouble because the other Orions start to notice she's holding back. And in fact, when one of her crew stabs one of the blue guys, she surreptitiously heals him, and he gets mad at her for doing so. Which
says,
is kind
of what trickery is this?
Yeah. So, and he ends up, going back and helping his guys capture the ship, and then they get it back by releasing laughing gas into the. I love the fact that the Tendi and her crew have the
breathing
gas
units.
masks on, but they're completely ineffective, and they start laughing too, which was funny. And I like that her crew reveals that they kind of want to be like her, where she got to follow her passion and go to Starfleet. They want to follow their passions too, like dance. One of them starts to dance. That was
baking.
amusing.
One of them wants to bake, one of them wants to dance, and one of them wants to teach ethics at Orion University.
Which made me wonder what exactly the Orion ethical code would be. I mean, your culture based on piracy. What does an ethics course look like there?
Yes. I really hope that at some point we get the Captain Jack Sparrow equivalent Orion, like just one that is just clearly an homage to Johnny Depp as Captain
Oh, I see
Jack.
what you mean. Uh-huh.
Yeah. That would be a kind of funny episode to do.
I hear
or even get Johnny Depp.
I hear Captain Jack in a science fiction context, and I think something else entirely.
A total different doctor, shall we say. All right, so they get back to Orion, and the Blue Orions declare war, and that's enough to get Tendi. And that's Tendi's loyalty with her family. She's like, no, I'm going to stay because my family's important to me. And that really bears out in the next episode too, which we'll get to, the importance of family to Tendi, which is really nice to see.
One more note on the Orion plot before we move on, and you'll notice the Blue Orions pronounce their name Orion.
Yeah.
And that's also going to go back to Star Trek, the animated series, where they had a different pronunciation in the script.
Right. I initially wondered that, and then, I figured that must have been it. All right, so let's switch over to the other one. So we start with Boimler with his Fleet magazine, because Starfleet has a magazine, and it has its annual 30 under 30% of lifespan issue.
Well, 30 under 30 is the way they say it. Yeah,
I think it's one point. It's like, or it might be even on the screen in the cover. It's like, because 30 years old, some species live so long, so it's 30 under 30% lifespan or something. In any case, he was interviewed for it, thought he was going to be in it, and got passed over. Wasn't even the alternates, and who was in it though was Naomi Wildman from Voyager, who's only 10 years old. Remembering that she's a Kataran, half Kataran. And so she ages more rapidly than humans do. So she might be only 10, but she, I think in season 7 of Voyager, we saw her appear to be much older. I think that might have been in a flash forward where we saw her grown up.
Yeah.
But in any case, nice call back to Naomi Wildman. So Boimler is, they're all lieutenants now. That's one of the things that we got at the end of last season. So they all have new duties. Rutherford is overworking himself because he's missing Tendi. We still have this. Are they just friends, or is there more thing going on between them? This idea that are they? Do they secretly like each other in a?
They clearly secretly like each other in a romantic sense, but they're locked into permanent comedic will they, won't they?
Yeah, exactly. And so he's overworking himself to avoid being sad about Tendi. And that plays a role in his encounter with his alternate self. Oh,
yeah, his alternate self. So in this one, they've got their new duties. They're starting the new day. They're ordered to report to the bridge. When they get to the bridge, they discover there's an interdimensional warp that they've encountered, and they complain about, another one? We've had so many of these lately. And it's initially stable, but it goes unstable and starts to expand and consumes the Cerritos as it expands. And I like one of the lines. I think Ransom has the line. He says, "We're dunking into the rift like a big old cookie," because of the saucer section. Right. And then they're in this alternate universe, and we have squabbling about whose universe is alternate and whose is prime. And
that's always good.
I like how the alternate universe people keep referring to our Cerritos as, the fakes. We need to get the fake Cerritos back. and then later on, it's the bad Cerritos. And we have some staffing differences, because of course in an alternate universe, the key enjoyment is seeing how are our characters different. Well, right. Captain Freeman is not the captain of the alternate Cerritos. And when our Captain Freeman learns that, she's like, "What happened to my character?" And the alternate Cerritos crew keeps dodging the question. Right. And in a moment that's like the Worf episode Parallels, where Riker from the Borgified universe gets to see Picard, and he's like, "Oh, it's so good to see you again, Captain," meaning our Captain Picard is dead. Yeah. Ransom from the alternate universe says, "Let's just say it's really good to see you again, Captain." Yeah. But then later we learn she made mistakes in the alternate universe and got sent to Starbase 80, which is that's the worst starbase in our fleet. Yeah. So that's
heard of it before.
Yeah. We've seen it a little bit, and it's really bad. So that's her, and instead Beckett Becky, as she goes by, is the captain, and we talked about her. Yeah. Billups in this is a king.
Yes.
Ransom has longer hair. Dr. Ta'ana looks the same. With our main characters, though, Becky is the captain. Tendi is not here. Rutherford is almost Borgified. He's got so many cybernetic things on him. And they explain that they did have a Becky, but after she left, she had to go back to Orion to be a pirate. After she left, Rutherford, or Otherford, as as our Rutherford calls him, couldn't take it, and he deleted his memories of Tendi. And Brad Boimler has a purple beard, and which he keeps stroking. It's like, guys, you're making too big a deal out of this.
Well, it's the Rikerization of him.
Yeah, well, yeah, but he also is very successful and very confident. And
because he has the beard.
Yeah. And so our Boimler is looking up to him as, oh, I want to be like this guy.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that was the great thing. It's like we always talk about when Star Trek The Next Generation got good is when Riker grew the beard. So
it really took about a season after that, but yeah.
It did.
But that's actually a TV trope. If you go to TV, growing the beard, it's the opposite of jumping the shark.
Yeah.
Well, it's also DS9 did that when Cisco grew the beard.
Yeah.
I mean, it was good from the beginning, but Cisco grew the beard. Yeah.
You know, talking about Captain Freeman and her being on Starbase 80, they set this up to make it sound as though she had been killed, or perhaps something absolutely horrible. Has she been, I don't know, assimilated by the Borg or something crazy? And like, oh, no, she's at Starbase 80. And like, oh, Starbase 80, that's horrible.
That's like, because the alternate Ransom, even like as a tear, like when he's saying, oh, it's so good to see you again. Like it's like as if it was the worst thing possible. And they talk about how, this is just, a slightly alternate universe where a few different choices were made. And it's interesting to think about that, that idea is how different our crew could be if only a few different things had changed and decisions were made.
And so the characters start to interact, and there's a surprising amount of friction between people and their alternate versions.
Yeah.
That's a decision that Captain Freeman makes, is everybody pair up with your alternate and we're going to solve this problem. And then she discovers she doesn't have an alternate. Yeah. But there's a surprising amount of friction between the different alternates, although not all of them. Like the two Shaxes are arm wrestling and they're admiring each other's form, and it's like, I learned this strangling Cardassians. Oh, I did too. But in terms of character evolution, that's what they're really interested in doing here, is holding up mirrors to our main characters to help them evolve as characters. Right. And so Rutherford makes a tweak in Rutherford's friendship algorithm. And as he's doing that, Rutherford says, what are you doing? And I'm just making a little adjustment in your friendship algorithm. And Rutherford says, I'm not here to make friends. Tweak, I am here to make friends. and so our Rutherford helps the other one, and at the same time gets to see how he could go. So this is a cautionary tale for Rutherford of don't go this way over Tendi, because you could. The main focus, though, is on Mariner. And she gets to see an alternate version of herself where she completely sublimates her desire to be a loose cannon in order to rise in the ranks. And she becomes a terrible captain who is using fear to control her crew. And even her other self is not enjoying this and wants the freedom of being a loose cannon again. And so she switches places with her. There's one moment in where a couple of the officers, it's the Tamarians, get in a fight, and Becky orders Mariner to take one of the officers to the brig. And when Mariner resists and the rest of the Cerritos crew resist, it's like, I will throw you all in the brig. And I think it's King Billups says, she'll do it. This ship is mostly brigs. and so we get Mariner, we get character evolution for her where she realizes, even though I'm moving up in ranks, I need to retain who I am. which I don't think was really in doubt before, but, at least they're trying to do character development there. And then Boimler swipes a pad that belongs to the bearded Boimler, which apparently has the same issue, of Fleet magazine in it, and he's on the cover. And so he wants to read the biography of his other self to see what he did different so he can be successful.
Right. Which we start to see him trying to do in the next episode.
Yeah. Now, I think as a result of that, we may, because it carries over from episode to episode, we may see this alternate crew, or at least alternate Boimler in the future.
Right. Well, here's a fan theory that's kind of related to that, which is, so we get T'Lyn, who the main difference seems to be one says fascinating and the other says incredible. Remarkable. And at the end of the episode, back in our Cerritos, T'Lyn in the lounge says, "Oh, remarkable," and they all kind of look at her and just, "Oh, I put one over on you.
I've gotten you." Yeah, but maybe that was the real slip, and it's the alternate T'Lyn.
Right.
That's the theory is. So that would be interesting to see, and maybe it would be the cause of us going back to this other dimension by the end of the year.
Late in the episode when the Captain Becky phasers our Mariner. I had the thought for a little bit that they were going to leave the two on the opposite ships and kind of let that ruse play out for a few episodes, and then we'd have to have an episode somewhere down the line where they get switched back or something. But obviously that didn't happen. But with T'Lyn, that could be an interesting thing to see how it plays out. Although the two T'Lyns didn't show nearly the differences that any of the others did. So
it could be they just wanted to see what it was like on the other side, or from a logical perspective, especially since in the next episode, T'Lyn seems to exhibit some unusual behaviors. We're about to start talking about that, but I wanted to mention one other last thing. In order to reopen the rift to send the bad Cerritos through, they had to combine the ships, and so we get two ships finally in, like, they can be opposite of each other in different orientation. Like one's upside down compared to the other. Like, yes, that you could do that in space. So I thought that was kind of funny.
And that's how you get baby starships.
Little shuttles coming out. The shuttle bay. Any other things to say about Dos Cerritos before we move on?
Nothing from my end. I think we've covered it.
All right. Let's. So, Jimmy, can you give us a recap of Shades of Green?
This week, Divana has to deal with the war that the Blue Orions have declared. To settle it, the Pirate Queen mandates a solar sail race through an asteroid belt to get some treasure, and whoever loses will be removed from the syndicate. But Divana's team's efforts are hampered because Divana has learned, by reading her private logs, that her sister D'Erica is pregnant, and Divana is being overprotective. She later learns that the pregnancy was a secret only from her, because the child will be the new mistress of the winter constellations, and Divana would, under Orion law, be required to stay for 14 years to train her. So D'Erica was actually protecting Divana and her freedom. Armed with this knowledge, Divana comes up with a plan. They board the Blue Orion ship and steal the treasure, and Divana then destroys it, forcing a tie between the two groups, figuring that the tie will please the Pirate Queen. But it doesn't, and the Pirate Queen expels House Tendi and House Azure from the syndicate. Meanwhile, the Cerritos visits a newly post-scarcity planet that's dismantling its capitalist system, but the ensigns under Boimler's command are kidnapped by rich elitists who don't like the new system. They appear to have been killed by their captors, but it turns out that they survived because of a pointer that Boimler gave them. Also, T'Lyn offers to help Rutherford repair the shuttle that he and Divana had been working on, but he's crushed when she repairs the shuttle entirely by herself. Upon understanding its significance as a joint project between Rutherford and Tendi, T'Lyn smashes up the shuttle so that they can all repair it together. Divana returns to the Cerritos, and House Tendi, with House Azure assistance, becomes the wealth disposal service for the newly post-scarcity planet by hauling off all of their unneeded gold and jewels. The end.
Father, your overall impression of this one?
Another fun episode, not as high on the list maybe as the first one of the season, but still something that was entertaining enough to move things along.
Jimmy, how about you?
I liked it. I like this as a two-parter because, and what I specifically like is Tendi is the focus. Even though the Cerritos is doing something else during this, the focus here of all of our regulars is really on Tendi, and she normally gets the least attention of our 4 or now 5 main regulars. So I really like the chance to get to see Tendi shine and to learn more about her culture, even if it's played for comedy here. And that's what I really like about this is we're finally getting kind of a deep dive into who Tendi is and how she functions and things like that.
I agree. And another thing I also liked about it was just the very like pro baby, pro family focus of it. You know that her sister having a baby was a time for joy and excitement, and so it's nice to see that. You don't always see that in popular media these days.
That's really across popular media these days. I mean, they don't do it always, but it's not like the 70s. In the 70s, you know, if let's say Maude gets pregnant, Maude may well and did on that show have an abortion.
Right.
Whereas today, if someone gets pregnant, I mean, there may be some stress, you know, about how are we going to handle this, but abortion is not on the table in TV shows today. And it's always portrayed as a fundamentally good, happy thing, even if it causes problems.
That is interesting. Yeah. That the shift has really been in there, that if we're going to introduce a baby, it's generally because we want it to be a happy occasion, despite whatever stress. So that was good.
Now in science fiction, they may then rapidly age up the baby and get it off screen, but at least it's happy.
They do that in non-science fiction sitcoms sometimes too. Like, where did that baby go? So the other interesting thing to me is this whole like the Targalis. What happens when a society enters the Federation and gets access to this post-scarcity technologies, and I like the fact that they address it like, well, they must have to cast off capitalism. They don't need currency anymore, and they don't need any of that stuff. And like at one point, they confiscate somebody's vehicle, and they're like, "Hey, I don't care. I'll just replicate a new one." It's like, oh, right. So it's interesting to see that. And yet, within Star Trek, there are still societies, Ferengi and Orions, for whom it is not. It's wealth still matters, which is interesting when you have replicators. It even still matters in the versions, even in the Federation, because like in I recently watched the second season Next Gen Ep, The Measure of a Man, and Captain Picard is arranging a dinner with his former love interest, and it's like, you buy in? And obviously in Deep Space Nine, with the Ferengi having a business right there on the promenade that the Starfleet officers patronize, they're paying something in quarks. They're not getting their drinks free.
Right.
I wonder though if they're paying out of some pool, sort of like a religious order. Like the individual members don't have money, so they pay out of whatever the order has. So maybe it's just Starfleet's tab that they're working off of. It may be something like that, but this is just more clear. Really, this cashless thing was introduced in Star Trek: Search for Whales in a throwaway line as a joke that Jim Kirk has when he and Dr. Jillian are having pizza. Right. And she says, they realize somebody needs to pay. And she says, let me guess, you don't have money in the future. And he says, as a matter of fact, we don't. All that need mean is they don't have cash in the future. But they decided in Next Gen to take it to mean a radically different economic system that consistently does not work, and therefore is, even though they're right, being in a post scarcity society would change things, and so that's a good move to try to explain the impact of replicators on economics.
but still it's not really going to do away with the need for money. So, it's fun. It's fine and fun seeing them poke fun at all this, but it doesn't work even in Star Trek.
Right.
No.
And in the original series, weren't there references to Federation credits or something as a kind of currency?
Yep.
People getting paid, miners and various people. Yeah, people getting paid.
How are you going to get those mail order brides if you're not getting paid as a miner?
That's what this episode I was thinking about. Was the episode in Next Gen where they unfreeze the 20th century folks
into second season
after Voyage Home?
It was into first season, actually. I think the Neutral Zone was the title of the episode.
The Neutral Zone. You're right. It's Shades of Grey, the clip show that's the end of season 2.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I don't remember which came first.
That's a good question.
Oh, it was after Voyage Home. Voyage Home was, I'm pretty sure, was in the early 86. To mid 90s, and Next Gen came on the air in like 87. So this would have been in 88, if I'm right.
Voyage Home was November of 86.
Mm-hmm.
And that was September of 86 was when TNG started. So yeah, it would have been after Voyage Home. Okay. Interesting. So
the reason Don brings that up is because one of the a couple of the unfrozen people from the 20th century, well, they all came from rich backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But one of them is particularly interested in what his portfolio has done in the centuries. He's been a corpsicle, and Picard alludes to the economics of the 24th century are a bit different than you remember.
Right. It's no more wealth. So one of the funny bits that we get is Boimler, now that he has been exposed to what he could potentially be, is trying to emulate his alternate version, first by growing a little some hairs on his lip.
Beginnings of a mustache.
Yeah. Yes. Which Mariner thinks you've been infected with something. Oh, there's something on your face. And then he's giving out to the lower, the ensigns that he's in charge of, Boimler's bointers. It's not pointers, bointers. It's typically funny. It reminds me a bit of.
It's cringy.
Yeah,
which is deliberate.
Yes. Yeah. They're often just like bad or obvious tips. Like people who hand out life hacks who have no business handing out life hacks. That's the same sort of thing.
And most life hacks are useless anyway.
Most of them are, yeah. So they have this whole thing where they're running around chasing down their abducted ensigns, and at one point he gets on that vehicle. I was saying it looks like a hover bike, and Mariner has to point out you're on it facing the wrong way. It's like, darn it, he has to turn around. So yeah,
they're gonna. So the way this works is. He wants to be, so Mariner talks to him about all the pointers he's given to his ensigns, and suggests that he slack off, that she's very much like, I'm all into these pointers, they're great and so forth, but maybe you want to give it a break with these guys and let them have some fun, because the planet is having a big post-scarcity celebration. And they're literally burning money. Burning money is floating through the atmosphere like confetti and stuff like that. So it's a big party, and so Boimler decides he wants to be the fun boss, and so he lets his ensigns have an hour off. But then they don't show up, and it turns out they're being kidnapped by these elite people who were wealthy under the scarcity system, and they're not happy with the way society is going now. So they kidnap them, but because of the planet-wide party, there are no security officers that can come and assist. They've been talking to Ransom up on the ship, actually, ironically, through through Mariner's comm badge because she's like talking to Ransom, and Boimler can't restrain himself and starts talking through her comm badge, and Ransom is like, I really like that you two are sharing a comm badge, and
he's very efficient.
Yeah, I was like, do you need us to send you a comm badge, Boimler?
That was good.
But anyway, they hop on the speeder bike. They trace the rich people to their lair, which is appropriately amazing. But and it's being guarded by droids. But these are like the kind of droids that rich people would have. So like there are housekeeper droids and gardener droids, and they've just attached weapons to them. So like a housekeeping droid is trying to sweep with a big machine gun. And so Mariner, to get past them, like throws a vase and it shatters on an upper staircase, and the house cleaning droids are like, this must not stand, and they zoom up to attend to the mess. And Mariner says her famous last words, easiest, rescue ever. Yeah. But then she and Boimler are taken prisoner by an armed gardener droid. And the armed gardener droid escorts them to the cells. It's going to put them in the cells. When they start to get in the cells, they look in, and it looks like their two ensigns are dead on the floor. And the gardener droid says, I forgot to water them. I have failed as a guard and a gardener. And there's like this weird stuff coming out of their mouths and so forth. And so Mariner and Boimler start to try to resuscitate the ensigns. And Boimler at one point has this great line. He says, turn away from the mountain.
Yes.
and then it turns out that the two guys are not at all dead. They one of the pointers they were given was, whenever you're on a new planet, learn all about the local flora and fauna. And they had done that, and they had learned about a local creature, a little insect, that would allow them to simulate death. And so it's as a ruse to try to escape. And so actually the pointers saved the day, which was a nice twist, because initially I thought this is just this cringy humor here, but then they made it important. And so it's like, okay, you redeemed all that for me.
Yep. I did like the that the resolution was to make a pointer important or useful. And then we have the whole Tendi track, which is the A plot, and we find out, as we always see in shows, don't sneakily read people's journals. It's always bad. People's private journals are private. Leave them be. But she did, and she found her sister was pregnant, and we have this whole thing where she doesn't actually another trope where she doesn't actually confront her about it. She hints at it and interprets everything that Erica says in light of this new knowledge, which is, it creates hilarity. And then we get this solar sail race, which is a something we got out of DS9, the idea of a solar sail. Wasn't exactly a race at the time, but it was a solar sail trip. And they have to sail through a nebula, which is actually an asteroid field. I'm not sure why they call it a nebula in the show. That was kind of a weird thing. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it was kind of weird.
Nebulas occur when stars spew out stuff, and some of the stuff they spew out is, solid matter. So yeah, it could be both.
But she's always trying to get her sister to stop doing anything that would be a strain or stressful, and ends up starting a cutiny.
Yeah, a gentle, supportive mutiny, a cutiny.
That was funny.
And when Erica's, realizes that her crew is being insubordinate, she says, she talks to the crew about it, and they say, well, we're doing a cutiny, as if she would know that term. Yeah. And she says, look, either mutiny or don't.
Because again, it's not very Orion-like to have a mutiny. And in the end, she has to the blue Orions cheat, and they destroy their sails and that sort of stuff and make them crash, and so they have to come up with this other plan that Tendi comes up with, and they end up destroying this treasure, which I thought was weird. Like, why not take the treasure?
First, they ride a comet to catch up with the Blue Orion ship. Then they board the Blue Orion ship. Then they steal the treasure, which is some kind of glowing thing in a Star Trek box, from the Blue Orion ship. And then Tendi throws the treasure into space and blasts it, so that they both lose, and it's a tie.
I guess she wants it to be equitable, as opposed to, and she doesn't want anybody to lose.
Yeah, because the Pirate Queen said whoever loses this is going to be kicked out of the syndicate, and all of their wealth is going to be confiscated.
Yes.
And she doesn't want that to happen even to her enemies if she can avoid it.
I love the fact, like, when she scoffs at the name House Azure, she's like a little bit on the nose, don't you think? Or a little unimaginative, don't you think? Which I thought that was, I just struck me as funny. But it backfires, and I like how we neatly fix that in the end by matching it up with the B plot, so that, oh, well, Starfleet has to get rid of all this wealth from Targalis. Might as well give it to Tendi's house, and hire the Blue Orions to give them a job and help them out as well. That's right, Tendi.
So even though they're both kicked out of the syndicate, they're both going to do okay financially, and no doubt will buy their way back into the syndicate later.
Yeah.
But I like that wealth disposal service. It's like they're garbage men for wealth.
You could provide a big service to the Federation, I guess.
Yeah, I was thinking, like, there's no other way to get rid of your gold and your jewelry. You actually have to pay someone to haul it off for you, huh?
Well, I'll haul it off for free, but I'll undercut the I'll be the lower bidder on that. Because I guess they said they had to like break it down with the replicator or something like that into its component parts. But hey, well, might as well do this. So, and then we had that whole thing with you mentioned of T'Lyn. She says she's training to be a senior science officer, so she needs shuttlecraft repair training, which I'm not sure why that's connected, and then we've had this shuttlecraft.
She admits that later on that she's really doing this to bond with Rutherford because she sees how broken up he is. So it may not be meant to make sense.
And we've had this shuttlecraft, Sequoia, I think
Sequoia, yep.
Yeah. That we've seen in previous seasons, just sitting in this shuttle bay that has been the hangout for our crew. And
it's a really rundown shuttle.
Yeah, and it's like a project car that it's revealed that Tendi and Rutherford have been working on together. So, like, the idea is not to actually finish the project. It's or eventually it is, but that's not the main goal. The main goal is to be doing this project together. The collaboration was the end, and T'Lyn had missed that, I guess. So that it was nice. Did you notice Gucci was there helping with the repairs? So the good badgie.
Yeah. So the way this plays out is, even though T'Lyn comes and asks to help repair the shuttle ostensibly for her own training, Rutherford is busy fixing stuff.
Yeah.
And so she volunteers to just wait, and they're playing this as creepy comedy because T'Lyn is like just going to stand there indefinitely until with Rutherford working on stuff, and it's kind of creepy. But then Rutherford apparently he goes to sleep, and when he wakes up, T'Lyn's fixed the entire shuttle and it's sparkling brand new.
Right.
And he explains to her that it was really an interpersonal project, and she understands that because really the reason she wanted to help him was with, was because he was missing Tendi. And so she thought by fixing the shuttle that would help him. And he decides that he accepts that graciously. He decides that he and Tendi, when Tendi comes back, they can fix something else together. Mm-hmm. But when Tendi does come back, they come into the shuttle bay, and T'Lyn has totally smashed the shuttle and she's got a hammer and is banging on pieces of it that are already detached from it to just warp them and distort them further. And Rutherford is like, T'Lyn, you've destroyed the shuttle. And she says, oh no, whatever shall we do? And they decide to fix it all together.
I like the fact, so Rutherford was working on the doors, the sliding doors, and it had this running gag where like the door would open and shut rapidly, and then it would open and someone would be standing. All of a sudden, it would jump scare Rutherford. That there was a funny running gag that they did. Anything else about this episode you want to mention or talk about, Father?
I think we covered most of it. I did kind of chuckle at the line elitist terrorist cells when they have the group that's fighting against the Federation's presence there and everything. Just the elitist and terrorist are not words you normally put together necessarily.
That's true. Jimmy, how about you?
Nope.
All right, let's get to that feedback we got from, these are all the feedback is coming from the last couple episodes of Prodigy. The first one comes from Touch of Grey. And Catherine Laffrey, our very own Catherine of the Secrets of Star Wars and Secrets of Sacred Art, on our Discord says, yep, the Doctor did impersonate other members of the Voyager crew in Renaissance Man, which was season 7, episode 24. So
almost at the end.
Almost at the end, yeah.
I know all but 2 left. And then on our next episode, Ouroboros, John S. on our Discord writes, Prodigy had a great finale, and I hope they continue the series. The character showed some good development over the 2 seasons. I will say that the second season seemed geared more towards established Trek fans than the young newbies. I feel like young, under 10 fans would get lost by the timey-wimey plot and all the connections to other Trek shows. I think that's an interesting aspect because Prodigy was originally billed as, we're going to make this an entry-level Star Trek. They're going to be, you're not going to need to know stuff in order to get into Star Trek. But it seems they shifted.
No, I think the shift was part of the plan because most kid shows are like, if they're built for more than 1 season, kid shows get built for 2 seasons.
Okay.
And so you can have a complex story where the second season is heavily dependent on the first. So I think that was always the plan. And yeah, we could come up with a 3rd season, but the plan was for 2. Okay. This is the same as like, to give a similar example, Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, which was like 2 seasons, or Gravity Falls, which, if I recall, was also 2 seasons. And so you start in season 1 by having a romp around the universe where you lay down all the concepts that you're going to use in season 2 to do the main plot that you're interested in.
Okay.
There were definitely, more elements, though, I think, in the second season of Prodigy calling back to other Trek series.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of what I enjoyed about the second season of Prodigy, being a longer-term Trekkie. It would be interesting to talk to someone who maybe watched Prodigy without having seen any other Star Trek series and see, what their reaction was at the end of the whole thing.
Who was this Wesley Crusher guy, and why does he have so many sweaters?
There you go.
Yeah. I wonder if Prodigy accomplished what they aimed to do, which was to be an on-ramp for new Trek fans. So I wonder if that actually worked out.
Not in an unalloyed way, or it would have had a smoother production history than it did. Because originally it was going to be on Nickelodeon, and it was on Nickelodeon, and then it wasn't, and then it was canceled, and then it wasn't canceled, and so I think they picked up some new people, but I don't think it was as successful as they had hoped, which is a pity because I think it's a good series.
Yeah. And I wonder how much of that just Paramount Plus corporate issues too.
Yeah.
One more piece of feedback from Topher Powell on YouTube. So after the Mars attack by the androids, Starfleet Command does not find any issue with using a hologram with an AI pattern controlling it being present on a ship full of our new cadets. I thought they decided that the AI pattern thinking in the androids was what made them so dangerous to cause mass destruction and death. Or is that error code isolated in the coding of Bruce Maddox for these particular androids?
Well, I don't know that it was Bruce Maddox who programmed the sense. It might or might not have been. I'd have to go back and check. But the problem was isolated to the sense on Mars. It did not apply to Data. It did not apply to the Doctor, and it did not apply to Hologram Janeway. All of those artificial intelligences had proved that they were stable and reliable. It was just the synth intelligences that were the problem. But Anyway, yeah.
Okay. And then Topher just continues, I've not been able to watch the new series because I will not break down and purchase Netflix, but your recaps and discussions have made me feel like I got to see each one. Thank you, X Christie. Thank you,
Likewise.
Yeah.
And that's all of our feedback this time. And now we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Nathan S., Joseph H., Jeff H., Gretchen B., and Isabel S. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us this time. What did you think of these first 2 episodes of Lower Deck Season 5, Dos Cerritos and Shades of Green? Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek, our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, send an email to trek@sqpn.com, or visit our Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. And you can watch The Secrets of Star Trek in full video on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the next new episode of Lower Decks. And until then, Father Jason Tyler, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Star Trek.
Thanks, Tom.
And Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thank you, and live long and prosper.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. Remember, don't you give me that sarcastic Vulcan salute.